join us in welcoming our first Impact Spotlight, President and CEO of REDF, Maria Kim.
Good morning. I'll start with a confession. I'm in recovery. Now, sometimes when people hear that term, they conflate it with being in recovery of an addiction, but when you look it up in the dictionary, it's actually about being on the other side of a deeply palpable loss. So I'm in recovery of not being chosen. This might be a little TMI for this audience, but just go with me. I promise I'm taking you somewhere. When I was 17 years old, my dad went on a business trip, and he never came home. First, he was gone for a month, then a few months, then a year, then 11 years. And on the other side of that, we became estranged, unsurprisingly, and he has since passed away. But there wasn't a day that didn't go by where I didn't feel my father actively not choosing me over and over and over again in my blood, in my DNA. It's like a suggestion or maybe a reminder that, hey, you're not so lovable, because if your daddy don't love you, then who's going to? And it's a through line that I've actively worked against once I knew, and once those who loved me reminded me the deepest truth of who I am. So I share this with you because that's my lived experience, right? And what I've learned through my work and my life over the years is that lived experience is not just what you've done or what's been done to you. It's sometimes this catalyst that makes you most beautifully, gloriously, affirmatively who you are. Do you know? And so in a weird way, maybe my lived experience is more aptly described as my lived expertise. So this notion of lived experience as lived expertise has permeated my professional life too. For the last 20 years, I've been knee-deep in the work of helping people overcoming the trappings of poverty get back to the power of a job. People who you often hear the rhetoric of, well, why don't folks just pull themselves up by their bootstraps without recognizing the systemic inequities that deprive people of boots in the first place? People like Rasan, a man I'm super proud to call friend to this day. I've known him for many, many moons. We worked together so long that he still has me as boss lady in his phone to this day. You can think of Rasan as like teddy bear meets big man on campus meets kind of a 50-year-old version of Urkel, if you remember that guy from TV. He's lovely, lovely, lovely. And I met Rasan a few months on the other side of incarceration. And when we met and got to know each other and built trust, I learned that the root of his lived experience was when he was 13 years old, he lost his mother pretty tragically to cervical cancer. And so in an instant, he went from being a boy who loved his mama to the man of the household who desperately wanted to provide for his sister and his 3 little brothers. Only in the neighborhood where Rasan came up, there weren't many options to kind of figure out a way to put food on the table. There were more, payday loans than banks, more liquor stores than grocery stores, more places where you kind of had to have your wits about you than places where kids could just go about and play. But there was one place that did show promise for Rasan, and it was the guys on the street. And they offered him a side of community too. So as you can imagine, Rasan, he lost his way for a little while in the underground economy. He eventually got into the prison system. And on the other side of incarceration, he said to himself, there had to be a different way. And he found his way to an employment social enterprise. Employment social enterprises are businesses that are doing some type of good or service for the world, but they exist for a greater ethos. And that ethos is to create jobs and mobility for folks who've hit a rough go. And so he worked with us for many, many moons and eventually got scooped up by a portfolio company in the Emerson Collective. And there, he got his bachelor's degree in sociology. He is enrolled this fall to get his master's degree in sociology because he's like, there's not enough men that are doing this work that can be the light for young men behind them. And he is a site manager of a program where he's working with 46 young men aged 18 to 30 who want to leave life on the street in the rearview mirror but lack a safe passageway to do so. Rasan is their safe passageway. Rasan's lived expertise: survival, tenacity, leadership, and drive. So sometimes when I share either Rasan's story or anyone's story that I've had the honor to work with over the years, I worry that people might get confused. I worry that you might all get confused. I worry that you might think that Rasan's story is exceptional, which it is, but it is not rare. There is a whole pool of talent all across this country that is itching to get back to work if only they had the access and opportunity to do so. A whole talent pool who remind us every day that skills are not just relegated by words on a resume, but by the string of experiences in our lives that make us creative, resilient, and whole. So my ask of you to turn hope into action on this fall day, I want you to get curious, I want you to get proximate, and I want you to get intentional. Get curious about the ways in which your firms might inadvertently be boxing people out for their lived experience and not boxing people in for their lived expertise. I want you to literally Google on your job site the entryist of entry-level jobs for your firm and read all the requirements and tell me they're as lowest barrier to entry as they can go. If they're not, I want you to push. Then I want you to get proximate. Meet some of the folks that I'm talking about in your local employment social enterprise or elsewhere at a community-based organization and get to know IRL, the people that would die to work for you if only they had the doorway in. And then I want you to get intentional. Some of you might be like, yeah, Marie, I'm picking up what you're putting down, but I don't have the jobs. Okay, but you do have the power of your purse. Look deep into your supply chain and tell me how you can convert it into a value chain. Put that pressure on the vendors with whom you transact to do the right thing. Because I'll tell you what, people out there, they follow the lead of people in here. And I know we can do this if we put our back into it. And if we do it, we end up shifting. Yeah, you can laugh at that. We end up shifting from a generational transfer of poverty to a generational transfer of joy. I know this to be true when I see Rasan and his 3 grandkids, 13, 9, and an itty bitty at 2 months old. They only know him as the funny, suave, swagger-filled, intelligent Papa Bear that they've known from jump. That is his lived expertise. And I know that their futures are forever brighter, forever possible, and even probable as a direct result of him. And that, my friends, is hope in action. Giddy up.